All right, today we're going to tackle a question that's, well, it's huge. It connects some of our oldest philosophy with our newest, most mind-bending technology. We're going to explore what some are calling the battle for the very soul of AI. And, it all kicks off with a really simple but profound question about us. No, really. Take a second, what is a human actually worth? Where does our value, our dignity, even come from? Is it our brain power, our DNA, or is it something else entirely?
And here's the kicker. Who gets to decide? Is it the government? Is it just what most people think? Or, and this is a big one, is it just whoever holds all the power?
For centuries, this was a debate for philosophers. But not anymore. This is not some academic exercise. Right now, we are building machines, AIs, that are going to have to act based on an answer to that very question. So what was a philosophical problem has suddenly become a massive technological crisis. In this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how we got to this point.
Okay, so section 1. When our sources talk about the battle for AI's soul, what they're really talking about is the fight over how we define human value. Why? Because that definition, whatever we decide it is exactly what we're trying to code into these incredibly powerful new AIs. See, we're in the middle of what people are calling the fourth industrial revolution. And this isn't just about, faster phones or better computers. It's about this crazy convergence of AI and biology. The whole idea of transhumanism. We're at a point where technology isn't just going to change our tools, it's on the verge of changing us. And that's the scary part. If we don't get crystal clear on what makes us human and where our rights come from, well, these new systems we're building might just end up defining it for us.
All right, so to really get a grip on this problem, we've got to go back in time. Our sources point out that the seeds for this crisis were actually planted centuries ago. They call it the Great Unraveling. Basically, the slow dismantling of the very foundation for human rights.
And it pretty much starts right here, with this guy, David Hume, back in the 18th century. He spotted a huge logical flaw. He said, you can't look at a fact about the world, something that is, and then logically jump to a moral rule, something you ought to do. So, for example, just because nature is often survival of the fittest, that doesn't mean we ought to treat each other that way. So, if morality doesn't come from nature, and it doesn't just come from pure reason, well, where in the world does it come from? That's the problem.
So what you're seeing here is like a philosophical domino effect. First, Hume cuts the cord between morality and nature. Then, about a century later, Nietzsche comes along and basically says, okay, and now the consequences are here. He saw the collapse of any higher transcendent source for morality, and he warned that this would lead to nihilism, right? A complete loss of meaning. Then, flash forward to the 20th century, and Foucault takes it to the final step. He argued that even the idea of humanity itself was just a recent invention, one that was about to disappear. With each of these steps, the ground beneath the idea of universal human rights just got weaker and weaker.
And we have to be really clear about Nietzsche. When he said God is dead, he wasn't celebrating, not at all. For him, it was a terrifying observation. He saw humanity as being set adrift, unchained from its sun, with no moral center of gravity. He wasn't cheering. He was sounding an alarm bell. He was warning us of a coming catastrophe.
So this is the really critical takeaway. Once you get rid of that transcendent anchor, that source of truth that's bigger than any human system, then rights aren't fundamental truths anymore. They just become negotiable. They're just social agreements that can be rewritten, redefined, or flat out erased by whoever happens to be in power.
Okay, so this whole philosophical unraveling, it's all kind of built on a purely materialist view of the world. But here's where it gets interesting. Our sources argue that this worldview has some serious scientific challenges of its own. So we're going to pivot now from philosophy to a huge debate in science about how life even got started.
What you're looking at here is the core of the scientific argument from our sources. On the left, you've got the standard picture of evolution we all learned in school, right? Slow, gradual, bottom-up change. But on the right is what they say the fossil record actually shows, especially during an event called the Cambrian explosion. And it looks totally different. They argue it shows an abrupt, explosive, top-down appearance of life, where all these major, complex animal types show up suddenly, pretty much fully formed.
Yeah, this event, the Cambrian explosion, about 541 million years ago, it's everything for their argument. From this perspective, it's not a story of slow tinkering over millions of years, it's a sudden burst. You get creatures like the trilobite popping up with unbelievably complex hardware, like compound eyes, with no clear trail of simpler ancestors in the rocks below. It's like jumping from a bicycle to a fighter jet, with none of the steps in between. And this observation leads them to what they call the information argument. The logic goes something like this. Step 1. To build a totally new kind of animal, you need a ton of new biological information. Think of it like a blueprint or software code. Step 2. This information, this biological code, is incredibly complex. And step 3. In every single instance we've ever observed, complex, functional code, like the code on your computer, always comes from a mind. It never just appears by chance. So they argue it's logical to conclude that the information needed for life must also come from an intelligent source.
Okay, so all of that, the philosophical history, the scientific debate, it all brings us here, to the final section. It's the ultimate choice that our sources are laying out for us. Where do we find a solid, stable anchor for human rights now, in the age of AI?
And according to our sources, the choice really boils down to two paths. Path 1, rights come from the system. That means they're granted by the government, or by what's popular, or just by the process of evolution. The problem with that, anything given by a system can be taken away by that system. They're negotiable, they can be changed. Path 2, rights come from a creator, a source that's transcendent, outside and above any human system. And in this view, rights aren't given by people, they're endowed, they're baked in. That makes them inalienable, permanent.
And this is why our sources say this famous line from the Declaration of Independence is so important. Endowed by their creator. That wasn't just fancy, poetic language. It was a radical, political, and philosophical statement. By grounding rights in a creator, they were intentionally putting those rights out of the reach of any king, any parliament, any majority vote. They were trying to anchor them in something untouchable.
And so, we're back where we started. The warning from our sources is that if we don't have that transcendent anchor, we're just going to create new idols to worship, this time technological ones. We could end up basing our morality on what technology wants, or we might create a new pecking order where an AI's diverse intelligence is seen as more valuable than a human's. Or maybe worst of all, we adopt some kind of evolutionary morality, where whatever is considered more evolved, and yeah, that could mean a super intelligent AI, gets to be the one that defines truth for the rest of us.
So here's the bottom line we're left with. As we're literally building these intelligent systems that are going to define our future, we are being forced, right now, to choose a foundation. So what's it going to be? Are we going to ground human dignity in the shifting sands of intelligence and power and so-called progress? Or are we going to find our way back to a transcendent anchor that puts human value above and beyond any system we could ever create? The choice we make isn't just about our tech. It's about us.